Now, one of the biggest things I get asked to do on the channel is to do a track car build. Now, even though I have quite a big history of track experience, I actually don't like buying track cars, and for some reason I end up buying weird things like this. But the main thing is I don't really enjoy it anymore. I don't necessarily enjoy doing track days compared to drift days, and also track days actually do terrible on YouTube. So for me to buy a track car for myself, put all that work, all that time into it, is just a huge waste of time. But a perfect opportunity has arose. Now, I'm sure you've heard of Greenlight Insurance. They're modified car specialists, and I initially put my Evo on cover with them all them years ago. Since then, I've had almost every single car insured with them, and over the years I developed an amazing relationship with Greenlight Insurance. We've done some truly unforgettable road trips and challenges on their YouTube channel, and I've become really good friends with them.
Bringing an MX-5, it's dark as f***. Still gonna send it!
Now, Greenlight have had a Focus ST for years, which is competing in Time Attack, and attended basically all of their shows with them. There hasn't been much expense on the car spared. It's virtually had every modification you can think of, and it's had multiple engine builds, the most recently running almost 600 horsepower. Now, there's always been a talk in the office about potentially making a change with the Focus and getting something new, but recently the car's been having a few issues relating to the traction control in the ECU, and after having a few track days wasted, their hand was forced. And because of all those reasons, Greenlight decided to move on from the Focus and break it all for parts, and they did it so fast. I came into the unit, it was a full car, 3 days later it was gone. I was like, where's the Focus gone? And they have got, obviously not as much as they put into the Focus, but they have got a bit of money back from all the parts. Now, I have always stressed with cars that simplicity is key. Things that work, work. And I proved that to Greenlight Insurance with my E30. They could not believe that it's still going, it still does every drift day, and I've never had a problem with it. So they've set me a challenge to prove that point even further. The task that they have given me is to make and create and build a Time Attack car off the money they've got from the second-hand parts from the Focus. So let me show you what I've started off with. So this is a Fiesta ST3. Yes, this is an ST3. This is the fancy boy spec with the heated seats and, is it keyless entry? It's the fancy boy spec, which is even harder to insure with the keyless entry, so that's why it's a fancy boy spec. Now, we got this car for £3,500 with fees. It's got 55,000 miles on the clock, and it is a Cat S. It's just been dropped off pretty much, and right now I don't know why it's a Cat S, because it doesn't look bad at all. It barely even looks like there's any damage to the front whatsoever, but I can see the headlight is loose, so it's definitely had some kind of a hit over here, because this side is tight, this side is not. But what kind of damage can knock the headlight out but keep the grille intact? I've absolutely no idea. The worst damage, luckily there's no damage to the side, because that is a pain, because they're irreplaceable parts and you've got to do a big body shop job to get any side of the car done. But the damage on the back looks the worst, but I still don't know why it's a Cat S, because it doesn't look too bad. The boot lid is obviously ruined and the rear bumper is obviously ruined, but why is it a Cat S? The one thing that's worrying me is that the boot lid isn't shut. Now, that could just be because it's bent. I don't want to try and slam it down, because I think it might touch the light, and if we can try and save the light, that'll be ideal. So the boot lid is, oh no. Okay, that's why it's a Cat S. The whole boot floor, so the boot floor is kinked. You can see a big kink here in the boot floor. I didn't see this on the pictures. The boot floor is kinked, and you can see here what looks like is, oh no, oh no. I mean, it's not that bad, it's just not ideal. I mean, it's a Cat S. Do you know what I mean? That's what it is. It's a Cat S. What looks like has happened is it's been hit in the rear and it's pushed into the boot lid, the boot floor. It's kinked the boot floor here, and you can see the big kind of, this is pushed, it's pushed all of this in. So I think we're going to see some pretty noticeable damage when we take off this rear bumper. I just hope there isn't the same story when we pull the front off. I hope there's not really bad like chassis leg damage on the front or anything like that. I actually hope there's no rear chassis leg damage either. I think what we've got to do is we've just got to take the bumpers off and just inspect it a little bit further. But that's gonna have to be pulled back, because that's probably why the boot lid isn't shutting, because this has 100% been pushed back. So we're gonna have to send this to a body shop and get that pulled out. And what we do with the boot floor, I'm not 100%. Maybe we're going to have to give that to the body shop. I won't be able to do that. We're going to have to get that on a jig, and that's going to have to be pulled back. Worst case, in the future, what we can do is we can just cut this boot floor out and just do a flat floor, just put a plate over it and just cut that out. But the one thing we do need to do is this will need to be pulled back. Otherwise, the bump won't go on, the rear bash bar won't go on, and the boot won't shut. Let's not focus on the negatives too quickly. The good thing is, it starts. It has got 55,000 miles, like legit. I'm not lying about that, and it drives. So it starts and drives, and it drives literally really well. So let's pull this in. Someone is ringing me, and they will not give up. So we're going to strip down the front of the car and hope we don't see any kind of damage similar to the back. The main things you're looking for is you've got the chassis legs here. Now the front of the car, this is a bash bar. Any kind of pinch here or knock here, that's not a big deal, because that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to take an impact, and this will bend a lot easier and crimple before it touches your chassis legs. Now these things here are your chassis legs, and if they're bent, that is bad. So this side looks really good, which I'm happy about, because this is the side that's definitely had the impact. This is a bit loose and this is cracked here, but right now it literally just looks like the bash bar and maybe kind of a rad pack potentially. So let's pull off the other side and let's see what's going on. So to get the bumper off, you've actually got to remove the headlight. And on this car, it's actually really easy. It's just 2 bolts. To get the bumper off, you've actually got to access a few from the top, and you've got to get some fiddly ones underneath through the wheel arch. And again, this can be quite fiddly. Now, depending on the state of your car, you might have them attached to the under tray, or you might not. You'll have to just have a look for yourself. Oh my God, how long does it need to be? Now make sure to remove any clips, and you should be able to just pull the bumper away. So the main things we're looking at is the chassis legs, which is these things here. We want to make sure there's no actual kinks, and also make sure the actual mating plate to the bash bar is flat as well. This side it is, which is good news, and that side's straight as well, which is good news. The only thing is that there's a bit of a curve in this plastic radiator housing. And I'm not sure if it's meant to be curved or that's just the design of it. I'm pretty sure what's just happened is that it's just popped out. It just looked further back, or it is further back. It's actually popped out of this bit here. So it is just popped out there, but we can't pull it back because it's bolted to the bash bar here. We will definitely need a new bash bar because this is bent. I can put my finger in here, but I can't put it in that side. So this is fully pushed out. So I think this has took the hit and it's pulled this bracket back, because this bash bar looks straight. The actual bash bar itself looks straight, and it's still bolted here and it's all fine. So I think what's happened is it's had a hit on the top of the radiator, bang, and it's pulled this bracket back so far until the riv nuts gave in, and then it's popped out of this as well. So we're going to need a new bash bar. It's pulled this back, but the main damage is from hitting the radiator, not hitting the bash bar, because there hasn't been an impact here. The thing with these Fiestas is that everything is just so cheap to buy, and that's another reason why we went with this as the base car, because you can actually extract a lot of power from these for not much money at all. And this is where this would, even though I do love my Clios, I love my Clios, these are a much more tunable option than the 2-litre Clios, like the 182s and 172s. Although it kills me because I love Clios, but for for the purposes it's going to be used for, this is a better option. Now that is quite good news for the front, but let's go on to what clearly is the worst damage on this, and it's the back. So let's take off the rear bumper and let's see what's going on. Oh. Now I did not see this in the pictures, and I did not expect this from the pictures. That bumper has done a really good job of hiding this. This is a big impact. So obviously it's had a big impact here. It's completely bent the bash bar. The bash bar has pretty much done nothing. And to show the actual impact as well is that look how far close to this kink it's gone. That takes a lot of force to bash this. And then not only that, it's carried through the bash bar, it's hit the rear of the back of the car, completely bent that in. It's then hit the wheel, it's travelled through the wheel, it's used the wheel and pushed the wheel further into the boot floor and kinks the whole boot floor as well. That is a big impact, a big impact. So what's looking more likely now is that something's hit it from the back and it's pushed it into another car from the front. Luckily enough, it looks like it's all the bottom of the floor. This actually looks quite straight-ish. Well, a lot straighter than the bottom of the floor, because the bottom of the floor took a massive impact. Now, a new bash bar will not go on. So we need to get this pulled straight, and that is going to be the first port of call. But let's just make sure, we're going to take this bash bar off, if we can, and let's just make sure the chassis legs aren't bent, because that is the biggest worry right now. So this in here is the rear chassis leg, and that's the main structural point of the car. You definitely don't want anything chassis related to be bent. Body stuff isn't that bad because it's usually thin metal. Like if you look at this, like I can pull that with my hand, and that is what is bent here. So the chassis leg here is flat and straight. There's no kinks inside, there's no cracked welds, and the other side is the same as well. So that is really good news that the chassis legs are straight. You can see how thin it is, so it's actually not that bad. Like look, you can see how thin this is. So that actually, I can't believe how thin that. Look, I'm pretty much fixing it now. So we've looked over all the car and we've got a pretty good starting point of what we need to order to start making a move on this. Obviously, we're not going to be able to fix the rear end ourselves. It's going to have to go to a body shop to get pulled out. But we're going to waste no time in this car. We're going to start getting straight on it. So let's pull it inside and start doing some of the work. So the Fiesta is actually booked in for the body shop. I think it's in the next few days or so. So it's going to be having the back sorted out. So in the meantime, we just want to sit around doing nothing. This is going to be pretty much a track car. Now it's on around about 60,000 miles. So it's at that time where things start to needing to be done. One of those is being the cam belt. So we will be doing the cam belt, but first of all, we're going to be doing a load of service parts just so we know the car is a good foundation to start going out on track. So we're doing a few bits and bobs here today. First of all, we're going to do an oil filter, an oil change, and some spark plugs. While we're doing that, we're actually going to start doing some modifications. So we've got a baffle plate here as well. So we are going to be doing a ton of mods in this, and little things like this just make it a little bit more future-proof. We are going to be putting a diff in it and stuff as well. So let's crack on servicing and starting to modify this Fiesta. Now, first of all, we're going to install a baffle plate in the sump. This stops your oil from surging over when you're going around corners, and it potentially stops catastrophic engine failure. Now, since we're going to be removing the oil to actually get inside the sump, it's a good time to actually prep to do an oil change. So first of all, we're going to remove the sump plug and just drain all the oil. So we are going to be taking the sump off. So I want as little oil in there as possible. So we're going to let that fully drain, and while we're waiting, we're just going to do the spark plugs. Now I know spark plugs is like one of those silly things to cover in a video. Ooh, changing your spark plugs. But I actually want to stress how important it actually is. Now, one thing spark plugs get affected by is heat. They can actually melt inside and therefore cause the end of the spark to not spark. I went through this very recently on my motorbike engine. It got a little bit hot. I went to start it and it wouldn't fire. All 4 spark plugs have disintegrated inside because of the heat of the engine. And also the end of the spark plug can actually start to clog up as well, thus affecting your spark. Now you might not necessarily know this, and it might not be extreme as your engine not firing, but this does make a difference to your economy and your performance as well. Now, interestingly enough, this is one thing that I've seen a lot in the car world, and people buy iridium spark plugs thinking they're going to get more performance or a bigger spark. That's not how it works. Iridium is just a stronger material that the spark plug is made out of, meaning that they last longer. That's really the only difference to iridium spark plugs. So sometimes it's actually not beneficial to buy iridium, just buy normal spark plugs and change them a bit more often. For example, everyone in the Evo world, they don't buy iridium spark plugs, they get normal Bosch spark plugs and they change them every 4 months. This was not only more cost effective, it was actually safer in the long run as well. Because iridium spark plugs only tend to last around 25% longer than platinum spark plugs, but sometimes they're almost triple the price. Now you might be thinking, oh, it's not such a big deal, I don't necessarily need to change my spark plug, it's not going to cause any damage, it might not just start one day. That is false. The end of the tip can actually corrode, and if that end of that metal tip drops in your piston, it is another potential catastrophic engine failure. So my advice would be, buy the platinum plugs and just change them more often, because they're definitely not hard to do, especially if you've got a 4-cylinder engine. Right, so now we've sorted out all the plugs, we can get underneath the car and start getting this sump off. But first of all, I need to get this oil filter out. I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty fiddly to get out. I still haven't quite still haven't quite figured out, as you can see, how to get this out of here. This is a bit of a joke, to be fair. Oil filters, okay, I've got it, but that is finger. Okay, there we go. That was annoying. There is absolutely zero access to get this in there. It's a horrendous design, I'm not going to lie. The only way I'm going to be able to get this out is to move this clip around. I'm going to have to try and move this clip so it's facing down. I don't know if your Fiesta is going to look like that, but if it does, it's going to be a pain to the oil filter, because you cannot get the oil filter up to there, through there, while that clip is facing that way. And now with that clip facing that way, you can just squeeze it through. So the next job we're gonna do is we're gonna remove the sump, because we're going to put that baffled sump in there. So to get the sump off, sorry for the terrible autofocus, but to get the sump off, there are 13 10mm bolts going the whole way around. But annoyingly, the design of this engine makes this job a little bit more long-winded. Now, one of the lower boost hoses is actually connected to the sump, but you can just wiggle it out the way. You don't have to fully remove it to get access to the final bolts. Oh my god. So yes, what I'm removing there is bell housing bolts. For some reason, the sump is actually bolted to the gearbox, which makes it a bit of a pain just to getting the bolts out. But as you know, what sits at the bottom of an engine is the rear main seal. You'll see in a minute. Once you've got all bolts off, the sump should come off pretty easily. You might have to just get a little bit of a pry bar there in it and just break off the original sealant. Now, the baffle kit was super easy to install. All you got to do is just put it over the oil pickup, use the 2 bolts supplied in the kit, and then tighten it back down. Trying to get all the sealant off was an absolute nightmare, and it took ages just because of the shape of the sump, and they had to get rid of the sealant of the rear main seal as well. Now, you also have to clean off all the old residue off the sump, because we are going to be resealing it with some new gasket sealer. Now, putting the sump back up can be a little bit fiddly, because you've also got to work it around the lower boost pipe and also miss the bottom end of the gearbox. So having 2 people here just to pull some things out of the way is really, really helpful. Now, I did take the sump off because I was a little bit worried because it wasn't sitting flat against the engine. Now, I was worried that maybe we hadn't bolted the baffle plate correctly, but we did give Forge a ring. They're the people who made this baffle plate, and we did ask them how tight should this be, and they said it is going to be a tight fit against the sump, so just bolt it up and it will sit nice and flush. Okay, so the sump is on. Luckily, we've got access to auto data here as well, so I've got the tightening specs and blah, 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 blah. So the sump is now on. I'm pretty sure what was happening was, obviously, you want that, what's it called? What's it bloody called? The oil pickups were catch can plate thing, whatever it's called. It's in my head. Editing it, I'm going to be annoyed. Whatever that's called. What's it called? The baffle plate. Obviously, you want that baffle plate to be tight at the bottom of the sump, otherwise it's not going to be doing its job. So I'm guessing what's kind of happened there is it's a real tight fit, and I'm guessing what's happened is when we tighten the bolts, it's just kind of made it a tight seal. So that's all. We're going to leave that to dry overnight. We definitely don't want to put any oil in that because there's a lot of sealant, and also annoyingly on this design, half of the sump actually goes over the rear main seal. So anyway, it's a bit of an annoying design, so we definitely want to make sure that's a decent seal because of the rear main seal there, which kind of splits in half over the sump, which is a weird design, but it is what it is. So we're going to let that dry, but even worst case, we're going to be taking the gearbox off soon, aren't we, to do something? Yeah. We're going to be putting a diff in there. This is where we pretend to... Right, so we've just torqued all of the things up. I got reminded it's not your car, Lee. And I said, oh yeah, maybe I should talk about that. Would have been fine. It would have been fine. So with all the service parts done, we're going to be ending this video here. And in the next episode, we're actually going to start fixing the damage that's happened from the crash on this car. Now, we can actually do the front end, but there's no way we're going to be able to do the back as it's bent in on the boot floor. So before we can get it to the body shop, we need to get it in a drivable condition, which it definitely isn't in now. So in the next episode, we're going to focus on getting everything back together, getting the front end back on. Therefore, we can drive it to the body shop and hopefully get the rear end sorted. So we'll see you in the next episode.